Alright, what's happening guys? Bro80s here. Today I'm going to show you how to play the Executor Nightfarer in Elden Ring NIGHTREIGN, as well as show you some interesting tech, some really good tips for him, and how to get better at deflecting attacks. Executor, in my opinion, is a very good Nightfarer who excels in one-on-one encounters, inflicting status ailments on his enemies and dishing out a ton of damage. I've come across a handful of people who have been underutilizing his toolkit, and so today is about helping you understand how he fits into the game and how to use him to his full potential. As usual, this is just my personal guide to him. If you disagree with any relics I use or have any other tips, please share in the comments below. Let's get into it. Executor draws inspiration from the core gameplay of Sekiro, with a focus on deflecting attacks and an added mix of proccing status effects and dealing damage in close combat. He can use his skill to deflect any incoming attack, so long as it's not a grab, and he can use his ultimate art to assist the team offensively or in a support sense. The Executor has an S scaling in Arcane and Dexterity, which are his primary two stats and the ones you'll want to be capitalizing on. He's a bit of a glass cannon, which is the trade-off for dealing insane damage up close, and it paints his cursed sword ability to be a high-risk, high-reward situation. What does the Executor do? Let's talk about it, man. Firstly, we have his passive ability, which is called Tenacity. If you yourself are inflicted with a status ailment like bleed or frost, then you receive a 20% damage boost and a slight stamina recovery boost for the next 20 seconds. Quite situational, but it's not bad. His character skill is his bread and butter, the Cursed Sword. This skill has no cooldown and can be used indefinitely. You can use this like any old weapon. You can perform light and heavy attacks, charged heavies, jump attacks, you name it. But the main attraction is the deflect mechanic. Like in Sekiro, if you block an attack just before it connects with you, you'll deflect the attack and nullify 100% of the damage. As I said earlier, you can deflect anything in the game except for grabs. Deflecting an attack deals stance damage to the attacker and costs far less stamina than just blocking. If you deflect a certain amount of attacks, your sword will begin to glow. While the sword is in this state, you can press the Ash of War button and you'll perform an anime slash which deals fantastic damage, at the cost of removing the glow buff. The damage of this cursed sword scales as you level up. I'll go ahead and put a table on screen so that you can pause the video and have a look at the damage for each level and how it scales with other katanas. I've also included the damage scaling for whether you have the increased damage relic equipped or not. Later on in the video, I'll talk more about this ability, ways you can learn how to deflect and how to best utilize this skill, but for now, let's continue. Lastly, we have his ultimate art, the beast form. When you use your ult, you assume the form of a large dog and you can do some pretty cool shit. He has light and heavy attack combos, jump attacks, a dodge, he can roar, which is effective against multiple enemies and can revive teammates from afar. And if you use your skill button, you'll wind up a large AoE swipe attack, which will deal massive stance damage, micro stagger bosses, but it will end the transformation immediately after. Game plan, you say? Oh yeah, let's get into it. Firstly, don't run off and do Everjails at level 1, you're not the main character in an anime series. Stay with your team and remain in close quarters against enemies and bosses. You'll want to be on the lookout for weapons that ideally scale with Dexterity and Arcane, or weapons that proc status effects such as Poison, Bleed, or Scarlet Rot. A reminder that Dexterity weapons does not just mean katanas. You can use Reapers, which also proc Bleed, and other insane weapons such as the Bloody Hellas. Man, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and pop a bunch of weapons on screen to be on the lookout for in your expeditions. You can go ahead and pause the video, screenshot, or use this as you see fit. I'm telling you, every weapon listed here are amazing picks for Executor and are the best ones I've personally come across on my runs. Go ahead and try them out in the sparring grounds. They're a lot of fun to use and they complement Executor's toolkit very well. Depending on the encounter, you can gauge whether to use your cursed sword or not. If it's an enemy you're confident with deflecting, then you can utilize your cursed sword a little bit. If it's something weird like a dragon or a troll, honestly, I wouldn't bother. I like to go with an 80-20 rule for Executor in most situations and use his cursed sword defensively. 80% using your main weapon to deal damage and proc status effects, and 20% using your cursed sword to play a bit more defensively and deal stance damage while the rest of your team wails into the boss. When should you use your ultimate art though? Same as I've said with my Guardian and Rev guides, weigh out whether it's necessary to use it. Are both teammates down? Turn into a large dog. Is only one teammate down? Don't really bother. Are you getting absolutely pummeled and need to turn into a large dog to retaliate? Turn into a large dog. But there's no wrong way to sort of use this ult. It's very versatile and has many uses. Me personally, I like to use the relic that allows you to heal yourself and teammates when you roar. This roar is very good for revives and for turning the tides in an encounter. I also like to use it to traverse the map quickly if I need to catch up to my team or outrun the storm. My personal favourite use I quite enjoy doing is turning into the beast form, instantly doing the AoE claw swipe and swapping back to humanoid form. This leaves me with around 20% of my ult gauge still full, and I've done some insane damage that rivals Raider, Wilder and even Iron Eye's ultimate. When it comes to relics, I'll show you 2 loadouts that I like to use for Executor. Firstly, it's worthwhile doing his Remembrance and obtaining the Golden Sprout. This relic turns his ultimate into a support tool and also helps you and your teammates restore HP in a few different ways. Secondly, I will use the Knight of the Miasma and the Knight of the Wise relics, which you get for defeating Fissure in the Fog and Sentient Pest. With these 2 relic combinations, your starting weapon will be inflicting 3 different status effects onto your enemies, and you'll be getting a damage boost from a few different ways. Plus you turn invisible, which is pretty neat. You cannot go wrong with this relic combination, honestly, and if you don't have any other relics, you may as well chuck these on, because to be honest, it's an insanely good combination and you don't even need to use any other weapons if you don't want to. I've completed many expeditions just using the starting katana. Another loadout I like to use is very similar to this one, except I'll swap out either of the Night Lord relics for something which allows my weapon to start with the Bloodblade Ash of War. If you get lucky enough to obtain a relic which comes with this bonus, take it. Bloodblade is an insanely strong Ash of War which only costs 3 FP, and you'll delete bosses and enemies with blood procs. Once again, try it out in the sparring grounds to see for yourself. Depending on which Night Lord I'm facing depends on which relic I swap out. If I'm fighting something like Gaping Jaw, I'll keep the Knight of the Wise relic, but if I'm fighting one like Sentient Pest, then I'll use Knight of the Miasma, as that boss really doesn't care for poison. You can't go wrong with interchanging these relics, really. They're both good, it's just a matter of which one suits the expedition more, or which one you like better. Another relic that's worth obtaining is the Executor's Grand Luminous Scene at the Collector's Signboard. This relic encourages a playstyle that's more focused around the Cursed Sword and deflecting more attacks, so if that's something you prefer, then that'd be the relic for you. When it comes to some spicy tech for Executor, oh, this dude has some sauce. I'm sure most of you know that you can deflect attacks when you sheath and unsheath your Cursed Sword. The parry window is much shorter than the normal deflection, however, it is still possible. Why this is useful is because the Cursed Sword does not build up any status effects and typically does less damage. So if you can deflect and swap back to your main weapon, you can still build status effects up and deal great damage while incorporating this tech. Another deflection tech is that when you use the Ash of War, you also have a parry window when you crouch down in the animation. Once again, it's a short window, but it is possible. These techs take a lot of practice to get used to, so I'd recommend practicing this in a solo expedition rather than with randoms. Something else about the Cursed Sword I want to mention is that it uses up way less stamina than any other weapon you'd be using. This is to compensate for the low damage it deals, I guess. Lastly for our tips, this is to do with whether to two-hand, one-hand, or power stance katanas. Me personally, I'll just one-hand a katana because it has the fastest moveset for Executor. This allows you to have better DPS and quicker status build. If you two-hand a katana, the attacks are slower and it doesn't really do much extra damage. This is because they're dex weapons, not strength. Furthermore, power stancing is much slower and uses up way more stamina, so I wouldn't recommend doing this. Now, if I've got a katana in one hand, I'll usually look for other status effect weapons to put in my offhand. A great example is the Ant Spur Rapier. If I have it in my offhand, I'll literally just use it to proc Scarlet Rot, and then I'll use my main weapon to build other status effects and dish out the real damage. Imagine this with the build I mentioned earlier. You are afflicting Scarlet Rot, Poison, Frostbite, and Bleed all at once, which is fucking crazy. Now, how do you get better at deflecting? Honestly, I would go into a solo expedition and just practice parrying. There's no penalty for leaving, and you can either play it as a normal expedition or just use it as a sandbox to practice deflecting enemies. It's much easier to read enemy movesets in a solo setting with much less going on. Try to deflect earlier rather than later because the window is quite generous, and if you make a mistake, it's better to accidentally block an attack than deflect late and get hit by it. Another hot tip is to watch the enemy's hands or arms instead of the weapon. It's a bit easier to read when the attack is coming towards you when you watch their limbs. What I usually like to do is see if I've got a Crucible Knight castle, because Crucible Knights are so easy to deflect. I'd encourage you to practice your deflections on these enemies because they've got very telegraphed attacks. That's all there is to it, really. They're a humanoid figure that just swings their sword around. No flashy or crazy moves. After this, maybe move up to deflecting bosses with crazier movesets, like the Banished Knights, Grafted Scion, or hell, even the Tree Sentinel or something. I find it way better to practice deflecting on runs rather than on the dummy in the training grounds. For some enemies, it's worth noting that sometimes it is better to hold your guard button. Holding the guard button extends your deflect coverage. Auto deflects follow up if they are made within the next 0.5 seconds, letting you chain into normal guard deflects. You'll find this common on enemies with fast flurrying attacks such as the Royal Revenant, the Grafted Scion, and sometimes Margit. To close off the video, I want to say that Executor is quite enjoyable for those who want to play a character that is a glass cannon, who inflicts ailments, and someone with a high risk, high reward playstyle. His Cursed Sword is a very satisfying ability to use, and it never gets old parrying a big combo. Anyway guys, that's all for today. Leave a comment if you enjoyed the video or have any further questions, and don't forget to subscribe. Lastly, we have a Discord server up and running. I'll leave a link for that in the description. Come join the flock and have a bloody good one.